Well, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on this special coverage with a focus on the ongoing polio vaccination campaign in the country. The Ministry of Health, in partnership with UNICEF Kenya, launched the vaccination drive earlier in the week, set to run until the 6th of October, which will be on Sunday. Now, this comes in response to a recent outbreak of circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2 in Kenya, with 5 cases confirmed this year. Now, among these, according to the ministry, 4 children are from the Kakuma refugee camp in Turkana County, and 1 case was detected in environmental surveillance in Kamukunji sub-county here in Nairobi. The campaign aims to immunize over 3.8 million children under the age of 5 across 9 high-risk counties, including Nairobi, Busia, Bungoma, Turkana, Trans Nzoia, West Pokot, Kiambu, Machakos, as well as Kajiado. And now to expound more on this matter, I'm joined by a fantastic panel. And just to introduce them to you, I'll begin with Dr. Mary Beth Maritim, who is an infectious diseases specialist. She is indeed the who leads the unit of infectious diseases at the Department of Clinical Medicine and Therapeutics at the University of Nairobi, also a senior lecturer at UON as well. Thank you for joining us this evening. We also have Professor Ezekiel Wafula, who is the chairperson of the National Polio Expert Committee. Thank you for joining us, Prof. We also has been a pediatrician for more than 4 decades. Quite an interesting hat there, Prof. And Rahab Wamboi, who is a polio champion who's based in Kiambu County. Thank you so much for joining us. She herself is a polio survivor and has been a champion for the community supporting polio eradication in Kenya. Thank you as well for joining us. Now, just to set context into this conversation, I'll begin with you, Prof. Just give us, paint for us a picture of where we are as a country when we're talking about polio right now.
Thank you very much for that question. As polio, as we have already read, where we are, we have had 5 cases of polio from vaccine-derived viruses. Vaccine-derived viruses are type 2. Type 2 is the most offensive of the strains of poliovirus we have now. What we have initially, these vaccines were developed from the wild viruses. Polio has 3 strains, type 1, type 2, and type 3. So the vaccines are also named similarly. When they made the vaccines from this type, from these viruses over the years, there was a mutation. There tend to be a mutation of the vaccines that were initially developed from the viruses. So type 2 reached a stage where it began causing paralysis. It has shifted enough. That's why it's called vaccine-derived virus. We don't have wild poliovirus in the country. It was there for some time. In fact, most of the wild polioviruses in the country have been imported from neighboring countries. One came from initially Nigeria, and then quite a bit from Somalia. Our own polio circulation, the last of our own indigenous polio the last one was 1984. So since then, the polioviruses we have had are imported. And then for some time now, the polioviruses we have, the wild ones, are confined in Afghanistan and Pakistan in Asia. But we don't, the rest of the polioviruses are vaccine-derived.
All right. And before I get to you, Dr. Mary Beth, I want to hear from Rahab. Just as a polio survivor, paint for us a picture. Talk to us about your journey and your experience having gone through this.
All right, thank you so much. This is a story I've shared severally, especially during these campaign periods. And I like sharing it because it is my story. I do not read it from a book. I was born a healthy baby, and according to my mother, I was able to walk at the age of 7 months. I did not crawl like any other children. I just stood and walked. and she found me walking. She was surprised, but she took it as a God's blessing. Then after I was 1.5 years, my mom was a casual laborer. She used to work in a coffee plantation. I come from Gatundu South, so we are surrounded with coffee plantations. So that is where she used to work. And one of these days, she came back home late in the evening and found me down with fever. I was suffering from flu and fever. So she thought it wise to take me to the nearest hospital, which was Gatundu General Hospital. And that is back in 1972. So then there were no polio vaccines. So she just took me to the hospital and described to the doctor that I'm suffering from fever. Then I was injected, and she tells me from there I could not stand, I could not sit, I just kept crying. She was told to take me back home. She went with me home, but the whole night I did not sleep. I kept crying. So in the morning, she decided to take me back to the hospital. And when she took me back to the hospital, they referred me to Kenyatta National Hospital. So in Kenyatta National Hospital, after diagnosis by the doctors, they said I have contracted polio. And the news were not great for my mother, because she was told I had paralysis from the hip downwards. So I was not going to be able to walk again like a normal child. So she was told to brace herself and take care of me as a child with disability. And that is how my journey with disability started. Yes.
What are some of the misconceptions you've had to encounter, especially with your interaction with the community from Kiambu and other community members from different areas of the country when you talk to them about polio? Do you feel like there is enough understanding of polio itself, and also why it is so important to have young children vaccinated against polio?
Yeah, I can appreciate that to date they are coming up to understand, and when we talk to them, seeing me as a live case, it helps a lot to make them understand the dangers of polio, of not giving their children vaccine, because according to my mother, if the vaccine was there then, I would have been given the vaccine, and she would not have had to go through what she has gone through in this journey of disability.
So we've come a long way as a country.
Yes, we have come a long way as a country, and I want to tell the viewers that it is not just this day they see us in the television or they see us in the campaigns at the community level. This is a journey that starts behind the scenes. There is a lot that is done to raise these funds to enable us to do this campaign. We have had to work with Rotary Club in fundraising for us to be able to eradicate polio in Kenya.
All right.
I can tell that during our time in my village, 3 of us got infected at the same time, but we did not know that this was polio. The infection came to me and 2 other neighbors, and fortunately enough, my mother did not just take it lying down. She took me to hospital and she took me through therapy, assessment, and I was able to join a special school. But the rest did not have that opportunity. So they are still out there. And you can imagine their case. They are depending on their families and friends and well-wishers for support.
All right.
So I can say that up to date, the community has embraced the campaign for polio. And much as we have had some resistance, especially religious, and as we speak, it's unfortunate because in Kiambu, right now, there is a message that is circulating in the social media platforms. And they are saying that this vaccine is a global, polio control is a population control means by the globalists. So kindly avoid it and protect your child.
Right.
I want to demystify this. This is not a population control thing. I wish they would know the pain that parents go through, and especially mothers who have to brace this life with their children, like my mother did. My dad was not there to support her. In fact, she did not want to see me. He did not want to have me in the family because I had acquired disability. So it is a difficult journey, and I can tell you there is nothing like population control. This is a myth like any other. So there has been myths and misconceptions before, and this is something we do not expect to have in this century, where we have people who are civilized, and we have embraced this vaccination, not only polio, all the vaccines that have been given to our children. So I want to demystify that in Kiambu. I am from Kiambu. I was born there. I live there. And I want to tell you that polio is real. And now that we have seen the virus, kindly allow our children to get the vaccine.
All right, Rahab. Yes. And we'll come to the issue of misconception as well and trust within the community. I want us to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we'll be engaging Dr. Mary Beth as well to give us an understanding of the different types of the polio vaccines. And of course, also understand about the misconceptions that have come about. Is this a new strain? And what is the ministry doing about it? All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Sikia, ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu Aya kituka na shika. Yummy na flow kama maji tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu moja juni tamu kama sali. Ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro. Hebu kama taka juicy ni juicy. Flavor zote tamu tena fruity. Are you bored? Kuna vitu zinakuudhi, sijali my bro. Hebu kama taka juicy juni.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Bunge la Kitaifa litaandaa vikao vya umma kesho Ijumaa ili kupokea maoni ya Wakenya kuhusu hoja kumwondoa ofisini naibu rais Rigathi Gachagua. Vikao hivyo vitaandaliwa kuanzia saa 2 asubuhi katika kaunti zote 47 nchini. Hapa Nairobi itakuwa Bomas of Kenya, Kisumu ni Tomboya Labour College, Mombasa ni Tononoka Social Hall, Busia ni pale Busia Airstrip, Kakamega ni Magharibi Hall, Kericho ni ACK Church Hall, Nyeri ni Nyeri Cultural Hall, Uasin Gishu ni County Hall, Vihiga ni Praise Church Center Mbale, Turkana ni Turkana University, Samburu ni Maralal Vocational Center, Marsabit ni Catholic Hall. Nyote mwakaribishwa.
When I have back pain, I reach for 2 tablets of Panadol Extra for fast relief of strong pain, like headache, toothache, muscle pain, and I'm released from pain to be there for those who need me. Try Panadol Extra for fast and effective relief from strong pain. New Panadol Extra Soluble dissolves twice as fast versus standard paracetamol tablets.
Here comes the, here comes the.
Try the new Dunked All-Star Box for only 8.90 Kenyan shillings. Hope you're ready for the new star of the show. KFC, it's finger-licking good while stocks last.
Dettol Skincare combines the trusted protection of Dettol with 2 times moisturizers to protect my skin from germs and keeps my skin soft with a beautiful fragrance. Beautiful skin is germ-free skin.
All right, thanks for staying with us on this special coverage as we focus on the ongoing polio vaccination campaign in the country and a much broader conversation on eradicating polio in Kenya. Just very quickly, once again, I'm with Professor Ezekiel Wafula, who is the chairperson of the National Polio Expert Committee, Dr. Mary Beth Maritim, who is an infectious diseases specialist, as well as Rahab Wamboi, a polio champion based in Kiambu County. Now, Dr. Mary Beth, when you talk about vaccinating children under 5 years, why is it so crucial to do that? And what are some of the potential risks of not being able to vaccinate children within that age group?
Thank you, Zainab, for that question. So polio is a vaccine-preventable disease. And what this means is that there is a vaccine that can prevent polio. And from listening to Rehab's story, if she had received the vaccine, she would have actually been prevented from contracting polio as a disease and developing the disability that she currently has. So polio exists in 3 strains. We have 3 strains of polio virus, type 1, type 2, and type 3. And the vaccine that currently exists, initially the oral polio vaccines used to contain the 3 strains, type 1, type 2, and type 3. Around 2014, there was removal of type 2 from the vaccine, and this moved from trivalent. Trivalent meaning it has the 3 types, and then now we have bivalent oral polio vaccines. In the bivalent oral polio vaccine, it contains type 1 and type 3, and it doesn't contain type 2. And this is because for a very long time, we haven't had wild type polio of type 2. What we actually have had a problem with is circulating vaccine-derived type 2 polio that Prof talked about. So when the vaccines are developed, the development of the vaccines allows them to be passaged through a mechanism which makes the virus to be able to mount an immunity within the body but not cause disease. We call that they are weakened through the process of manufacturing the vaccine. So like Prof explained earlier, when we have had the type 2, in some cases when it exists, it's able to some extent to revert back and be almost similar to the wild type 2. So in this campaign, because we are responding to the outbreak, and this outbreak has been caused by circulating vaccine-derived type 2 polio virus. So the campaign is using a new type. It's called a novel oral polio vaccine that has been developed and made in such a way that it's not able to revert back to the wild type, but is able to provide protection. So you mentioned the counties that are taking part. So because of the surveillance that identified the areas where we talked of 4 cases in Kakuma and 1 environmental case from Kamkunji. So the vaccine, because it's a response, it's targeting those areas, because when you have evidence of polio, either in circulating in people where there's feces. So we actually look for polio in feces, because polio infects through the intestines and is able to be passed and is found in the feces of someone who's infected. So from that surveillance, then you're able to respond. And that's why the counties have been selected, counties that are in close proximity to the western part of the country, as well as even Nairobi, because of the circulating virus that was identified.
So that's why they've also been identified as high-risk
yes.
counties.
So when you're looking at the response to this outbreak, once you have evidence of polio, either in the environment, which is in the form of the sewage, and we know that there could be that potential of drinking that contaminated water. So it makes it that the children in that particular environment then would be vulnerable, and that's why giving the vaccines is able to protect. So as Prof mentioned, when you have polio is one of those diseases where people can be infected and they wouldn't know that they're infected. So when you have about 200 people who are infected, only a few of them will develop symptoms, and maybe 1 out of those 200 will actually develop the paralysis. So it's one of those diseases where many more people would be infected and they wouldn't know that they're infected, but they would be able to pass the virus and likely to infect others. So by vaccinating the children 5 years and below, you're actually improving the immunity.
All right.
So one of the things that has been found is that polio is likely to circulate and cause infection in areas where the coverage is low, and there could be that there are vulnerable children who are likely to be infected. And that's why when you have campaign, then you're able to reach very many children within a given time and be able to improve the immunity within the community.
All right. Yes. Prof, indeed, we've seen and understood, especially from Dr. Mary Beth, that this is a very targeted campaign against the strain, the outbreak that we've received reports on. But we've seen several other campaigns being initiated in the country, not even one, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a year. What does that help in terms of helping manage the spread of this virus then?
Thank you. The campaigns actually have been made in response to outbreaks. So as Dr. Mary Beth has said, this has followed what you said, reported cases in Kakuma and over here. Mm-hmm. All the other campaigns have been following such outbreaks. Mm-hmm. And the reason we are doing campaigns, our surveillance, which is a method of trying to find out how the immunity is like based on vaccination, has demonstrated there are some areas in the populations where the vaccinations have major gaps. The coverage is much lower. There are many children not covered. So those are the children where if you have infection, they get infected and they keep the virus going. So the campaigns that respond. In fact, to answer you a little bit, if the immunization, which is routine immunization, mm-hmm. if it was effectively carried out so that everybody was vaccinated, then there would be no need for the campaigns. Because mm-hmm. if all the children are vaccinated and they are immune, then they would resist. That's on one point. The other point is that it's information now available that we normally talk about 3 doses of polio. That is the first vaccination, second vaccination, and then third. Mm-hmm. The reason they are given is that the 3 strains of viruses do not all get taken up in terms of immunity at the same time. Only one takes up. But studies now over the campaigns have demonstrated that in spite of what we used to think, that 3 doses of polio vaccination provide adequate immunity, we now know, like in experience in India, up to 10 may be required mm-hmm. to be able to provide adequate immunity for a child who has received. In Kenya, maybe not as many, but we need it that way. The reason also why we have campaigns in Kenya.
And just to hold on to that point before you get to the next one,
yes.
We've normally seen it being given in 2 doses.
Yes.
So the first dose and the second dose.
Yes.
You say it is paramount to even have more doses of the same, right?
Yes, yes.
So what happens for a child who only receives 1 dose of the polio vaccine and does not get the second dose then? That is on a normal
One of the things that happens, if you talk about the campaigns, the campaigns themselves, it has been demonstrated that when you do the first campaign followed by the second one, then the level of immunity you acquire in the population you are targeting is much higher, mm-hmm. adequately higher. So if you did only one, the performance will be poorer. That's why we have the 2. Mm-hmm. Now, if a child receives only 1 dose, you remember I told you that when a child is vaccinated initially by the trivalent vaccine, mm-hmm. during a vaccination, only one of the strains takes, the others don't. That's how it operates. Sometimes when they have diarrhea, even the diarrhea, because of various viruses, the diarrhea infections by viruses interfere with the taking of the polio vaccine. Mm-hmm. So if you take if 1 dose only is given, and you remember that you need multiple doses beyond the 3 we have traditionally given, then the likelihood of this child being immune to the 3 strains is very little. Mm-hmm. So we have to give multiple doses to ensure that all the children are immune, are resistant against the 3 strains of poliovirus, because each of the strains can paralyze independently. Mm-hmm. And the protection and the immunity to type 1 does not protect you against type 2 nor type 3. Mm-hmm. So you need to be resistant against all the 3 types of poliovirus.
So that needs a lot of collaboration with the community indeed, yes. to be able to understand and to be able to take up all those particular doses. Yes. And for Rahab now, when we come to that, then there's essential need to build trust with the community for them to be able to take their children to get those polio vaccines. But we've seen instances where some community members have been hesitant. For example, is the question that you brought up before we went on a break of misinformation on this particular vaccine, that perhaps it is a population control method from somewhere. So then how do we begin to build trust with the community and engaging them to tell them that this vaccine is essential for public health?
Yeah, I believe the first step is what we are doing right now, engaging the champions. Champions are survivors, and it is not that they have acquired it at a late age. This is something you acquire at an early age, and that is why we have been advocating that they give children below 5 years, because this is where they are more vulnerable. So when we use the champions, in fact, in many cases that I've visited places where there are so many resistance, and when they see me, I give them my story, the mothers just agree to it. Yeah, and there's this one thing that when we have anything that is good coming, there has to be some opposition. So we are used to that. And this opposition, it's a form of distraction. They want to distract them from the main focus, which now is to prevent our children from acquiring polio.
So how do you deal with that then?
We deal with that by making advocacy in all places, at the lowest point of the community, that is church, ad hoc meetings, schools, because mainly when you go to schools with ECDs, yeah, the early childhood, and you talk to the parents if they are there, or you talk to the teachers, you talk even to the children, and you ask them, do you want to become like me? Do you want to walk the way I'm walking? No child would want that. So when you talk to them as a case study, they will understand and they see it as a danger to their lives, both parents and also the children. So mostly we do advocacy based on the community levels, the lowest levels, with the language they understand.
Do you feel, for instance, that kind of advocacy has helped change and shape the opinion of people when it comes to the, partaking of the campaign
and vaccination? It has really changed, because when we came in as champions, initially we didn't have champions, but we used to have these vaccination campaigns. But when we came in, there were so many cases of resistance. And in fact, there are places we could go, because I could accompany the doctors or the medics that were administering the vaccine. And there are places we could go and we were forced to have reinforcement from the police and the chief. And in fact, we still used to be chased with pangas. There is a case I remember, we went to Kikuyu constituency, where this man had 3 wives. He had more than 13 children. 7 of them were below 5 years. And he said there's nothing like that will be administered to the children, because they are God-given, and why we get sick is because of sin. And because he is not a sinner, then the children are not sinners. So there is no way they can get sick. And when we tried to access that home, I'm telling you, I had to be carried because I could not run with the others. He just came with a panga, and it was very violent. But eventually as we went on talking to him, I went alone without any other person accompanying me, and I sat down with the wives, not the man, when he was not around. And I told them the dangers of not giving the children that vaccine. And that the mother said, now we want this thing to our children, because we do not want to go through what your mother went through.
Right.
Because I gave them the story. And many cases, we have visited very many families where they believe, no, we are not going to take this for our children. But when I give them my story and what my mother had to go through, sleeping on the streets of Nairobi because of my life, and what she has taken, it has taken her to be where I am today. All the mothers agree to it that their children need that vaccine. Because I tell them, it is not the fathers. The fathers come secondary. It is the mother who bears that burden of that child.
Certainly seen a shift in the mindset and attitudes as well.
A great one.
All right,
a huge one, yes.
Let's take another quick break here as we take a look at our news highlights. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.
try the new Dunked All-Star Box for only 8.90 Kenyan shillings. Hope you're ready for the new star of the show. KFC, it's finger-licking good while stocks last.
You know you're flying with the world's best. Crowned by Skytrax, 15 years in a row. Yep, we've taken over 500 million of you to places. Our crew, they train like champions. Global safety standards, we nailed them. 23 years and counting, all thanks to our dedicated All-Stars and you.
Usiachwe nyuma. Join us at the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Register by visiting www.nairobimarathon.com and help us move Kenya forward. Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. Run. Embrace possibility.
Is Dove better than ordinary soap? We're going to prove it. Take a bar of your soap and Dove. Use yours on one side, Dove on the other. The soap part feels rough. The Dove side is softer, smoother, and more radiant. With 1/4 moisturizing cream, Dove deeply nourishes for radiant skin all over. Try Dove and feel the difference.
My club, my club, my club! It's day one of My Club Festival Nakafu! With exclusive offers, massive discounts, irresistible prizes, big savings, bigger rewards! It's more than loyalty. It's crazy offers every day. Nakafu!
This is NTV.
Tonight.
Kutakuwa na shida kidogo tu, lakini itasawazishwa. Kwa sababu tumebadilika tu mara moja.
Transition to medical uncertainty. SHA nightmare continues 3 days after rollout. Government inefficiencies laid bare.
She was struggled, she was killed.
Kidnapped and killed. Family of slain Mombasa-based female taxi driver calls for justice. Detectives yet to unravel the murder motive. Plus, another failed attempt in court. All stops pulled for DP Rigathi Gachagua impeachment bid. MPs get set for public participation tomorrow.
The climate crisis requires massive investments to support vulnerable developing countries' transition to a resilient, low-carbon and nature-positive development.
Africa in a catch-22 on matters climate change. Indecision and inaction in the face of falling continental GDP. Will the tide change after COP29?
Doors should not hold out opportunities. Doors are the gateways to progress, the ones that hold ideas, and those that close deals. Let's take those to places where there are none. Let's open big doors that harbor progress. In all the places that we are.
KCB ni yangu.
KCB ni yetu.
KCB is mine.
KCB ni yetu. For people, for better.
Kenya ni nchi ya mabingwa. Na
hapa hakuna shortcut.
Kuwa bingwa ni kujitolea, kujituma.
Mabingwa hutambua mabingwa wenzao.
Mabingwa hurauka kabla ya jua kuchomoka. Wengine huwa mabingwa wa familia. Mabingwa huhakikisha tuna shine kama mabingwa. Wao hutulisha vyema. Ma-influencer wa kutuconnect mtandaoni. Mabingwa, wale ambao hutuongoza.
Sisi wote ni mabingwa.
Kijana hapo mbele, mzee hapo nyuma. Jamaa na jembe. Boda alimleta jamaa na jembe. Msichana wa kibao. Memba wa bodi, kijana wa maziwa.
Sisi wote ni Team Kenya.
This is the comfort of a mom's hug. Nahi ni Molfix diapers. Comfy like a mom's hug. Baby's drink is gloop. Molfix absorbs like whoop. Makofi to both baby and the new Molfix diapers. With its cottony soft texture and 3 times faster absorbent channels, the new Morphix diapers help to prevent rush. Morphix, comfy like a mom's hug.
All right, thanks for staying with us as we continue with our conversation on eradicating polio in the country. Now, Prof, just to get to you, why have we not been able as a country to completely have a 100% polio vaccination coverage across our border?
It's a very good question. I think where we are doing better than we used to do before. Initially, our coverages were around 50, 60%. The World Health Organization had given a figure of 80%, which it means that if there were 100 children in a particular locality, 8 of them should have been vaccinated. That's 80%. But at the moment, their coverages have improved. In areas, they are about 90%. That's where the recommendation is, that our coverage should go towards 90%. And the value of higher coverage is that most children, when they are covered that way, when they are immune that way, they tend to prevent the spread of polio among the others. So that's like, it gives a level of herd immunity. So as it is at the moment, part of the problem earlier, to answer your question, is that the vaccination efforts were limited to health facilities. And people had to bring their children to the facilities to be vaccinated. So only those who came were vaccinated, but those in their homes were not. Efforts were made where mobile clinics were initiated to go to where they are at home. Even that did not raise it very well. That's why we have supplemental immunization activities like what is going on now. The value of supplemental immunization activities is not just to respond to an outbreak like this, but to raise the immunity among the children, to have coverage. In experiences like this, sometimes after a coverage, after an event like this, we have had coverages of about 99% or 95%, which is a good thing. So the reason is that we haven't had the capacity to reach every child for multiple reasons. One, the children were not brought to the facilities. Two, our vaccination are based on fixed facilities, depending on mothers to come from their homes willingly to bring their children for vaccination. So if they don't bring, that's an issue. And then thirdly, the mobile clinics were also in limited areas. So given that, the only thing that I've tried to do much is when you have mass campaigns, supplemental immunization coverage goes to the people in their homes and where they are. And even then, as you have realized, some have refused because of misinformation.
Right.
So when they refuse, the children who are not vaccinated form a proportion of those who are vulnerable. Should the wild polio virus or a virus that causes disease come amongst them, they will get the disease and they are spread to other children who may have been missed out. So whenever you have any children who are missed up in a campaign, that pool adds up. You know, that, for example, the first dose is missed, the third dose, the second and third dose, those become a big proportion who are vulnerable to a wild polio virus or a strain that can cause disease.
Right. Yeah. And Dr. Mary Beth, I think Prof actually preempted a question I was going to ask, but probably you can also expound for us. So what happens to an adult or an older child who then missed the normal vaccination routine and did not receive the polio vaccine, but also missed out on these targeted vaccination campaigns? Are they at a very high risk of contracting, polio?
So polio is largely, the most vulnerable group is the children. But in settings where you haven't received any vaccination, even children who are 15 years and under can still develop an illness compatible with polio because they don't have any immunity. However, having said that, when you vaccinate the children like we are doing now in this campaign, then you're able to provide a herd immunity that's then able to even offer protection to older children. For the Western counties that are taking part in this campaign, we are using an older age group, 9 years and below, who are taking part in this vaccination campaign. So if the resources were not limiting, this campaign would actually be offered even to children who are 15 years and under. And when you look at currently the surveillance program, so when you talk of surveillance, it's active looking out for cases that are similar to polio. So part of what the Ministry of Health does as part of polio surveillance is to identify children who are 15 years and below who are presenting to facilities with weakness of the legs, of the hands. And if there is any such child in a facility, then a sample is sent to the lab to confirm whether that weakness is attributable to polio virus. Because when you have that weakness and you detect polio in the feces of that particular individual, then you're able to say this illness is actually caused by polio virus. So for that case definition, we include children who are 15 years and below, because those are the group that would be affected by polio. As people age, then they may have been exposed to virus and they may have developed the immunity. And therefore, in adult population, I'm an adult infectious disease specialist, we don't see a lot of cases of weakness that's attributable to polio. So the most vulnerable group are the 5 years and below. But if we had the resources, we probably could have vaccinated a higher population. So just again to speak into this is that when a child misses this vaccine, and that's why the campaigns provide an opportunity for meeting these children who may have missed the opportunity to receive the vaccination. And that's why it's able to build the immunity, because there could be some challenges that are making the mothers not take the children to the hospital. And that's why part of this campaign, it also provides an opportunity to identify children who have not been reached by health services and any vaccination, including the polio vaccine. And that provides an opportunity even to link these children with the healthcare setting so that they can receive other vaccines even beside the polio vaccine, because it just shows that they haven't had access to healthcare due to various circumstances.
Right.
Yes.
Rahab, let me get to you now. I mean, as we wind up, you remain optimistic that in your lifetime we will eradicate polio completely, globally.
Yes.
To what percentage is that optimism up until now?
Up to 100%. I would say it's up to 100%. We have worked towards this, and I believe in our Vision 2030, let me put it that way. We will not be having new cases of polio, because much of it is coming from our neighbors. It's not from us. It is from our neighbors who migrate to Kenya to and fro, and that is why you are saying the counties that we are targeting are the bordering counties.
Right.
And I believe with the campaigns and with the goodwill of both the sponsors and also the ministry, that is the government, and also the community, we are able to eradicate polio. We are able to take the case to zero, because there was a time, I believe they had said that Kenya is a polio-free country. We had reached that point. But because of the migration, the border migration, at least that is why we have come back to this campaign.
So there are certain gaps that still need to be addressed.
Yes. And this is, I don't know how we can go about it, because we cannot shut out our neighbors from coming to Kenya. But if it is possible that, like we do with other infections like Mpox, I see a lot of surveillance in our borders. If it is possible to do the same with polio virus, I believe we can attain that.
All right.
Yes, and much more, because it is not for us to have new cases. Yeah, it is a painful journey.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Prof, your final remarks and strategies that we must have in mind to ensure that we reach where Rahab believes we will be reaching by 2030.
Yes, I think there are a number of areas. One of them is we need to have our coverage meeting every child. So we need to go towards 100%, which means routine immunization needs to be improved in all the ways available by advocacy and others, so that people can bring their children for vaccination. And then we need also to continue doing supplemental immunizations to be able to reach every child. And then
so access is very critical.
Access is, and then the other bit is misinformation. Because misinformation, like Rehab said, that is a polio is a birth control method by global agencies.
Yeah.
Things like these platters, which are not really the truth, but they are advancing the interests of other people for hidden reasons. This misinformation, we should not condemn the people who are getting this information.
All right.
Rather, we should, in a gentle manner, reach out to them to give them the correct information through advocacy and others, to see the dangers. And oftentimes, like Rehab has said, when they see the dangers, they actually begin to embrace vaccination.
Thank you. And Dr. Marybeth, just 10 seconds as we wind up.
So I believe we will reach the target of eradicating polio in Kenya. And a lot of the things have been spoken by Rehab and Prof. And we really are grateful, and we want to speak to all the mothers who are listening to us to bring the children, because this is one of the contributions. As a country, Kenya is doing fairly well because it has a very good surveillance system, looking at detecting the paralyzed cases, as well as even the environmental surveillance. So we are meeting the target, and that's why we were able to detect this outbreak. So I just want to appreciate all the mothers and to urge them to bring their children, because it's very difficult to live with a child with disability, and even more so a disease that you can be able to prevent through vaccination.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Marybeth Maritim, infectious diseases specialist, senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi, but also leads the unit of infectious diseases at the Department of Clinical Medicine and Therapeutics, still at the University of Nairobi. Professor Ezekiel Wafula is the chairperson of the National Polio Expert Committee and has been a pediatrician for more than 4 decades. I'll come for some advice, Prof. And Rehab Wamboi, polio champion based in Kiambu County. She herself is a polio survivor and has dedicated her life to supporting polio eradication in Kenya. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for this conversation as we continue to look at the ongoing polio vaccination campaign in the country, spearheaded by the Ministry of Health in partnership with UNICEF Kenya. Well, that's it for now. As we wind up, we'll be expecting the NTV Tonight bulletin shortly with Ben Kitili. My name is Zainab Ismail. Good evening.